Hey, what is up? This is Coach Jim Ellie with Reactive Training Systems. And in today's video, we're going to teach you how to progress with emerging strategies. Now, the first thing you need to know before diving into this video is how to use RPE in your training and how to progress with RPE. If you're interested strictly in how to use RPE in your training, take a look at these videos up here. We have an entire playlist dedicated to using RPE in your training. It's a really useful tool. It's not the only tool when writing training with emerging strategies, but it's definitely one that allows us to gauge our estimated max and help us make better training decisions. And two, you need to understand how emerging strategies works. So what the concept is, what the whole point of emerging strategies is. And by the way, and stay tuned to the end of the video. We have an announcement to make about emerging strategies. And if you have not learned or heard about emerging strategies, then take a look at our seminar that we did in Brooklyn in 2017, all about emerging strategies. Mike Jussier goes over it in detail, talks about the concepts and why we use it and why we think it's a superior way to implement and write effective training. So without further ado, let's get into this video. We're going to be talking and showing an example protocol with a development block in emerging strategies and how one would progress using that protocol and in the emerging strategies framework. Just a general reminder that this is just one way to progress in emerging strategies. It's one way to progress with RPE. It's not the only way. And as you get more advanced as a powerlifter, you're going to learn more and more about how you relate to your own training and how you decide is ultimately the best way for you to progress with RPE. So we'd be really interested in learning what you think is the best way for you to progress. And if you have another way of approaching it, then definitely let us know in the comments below. If you have any questions, feel free to send us an Instagram message at Reactive Training Systems. And you can contact me at Jim_RTS or Mike or one of the other coaches, and we'd love to answer them for you. Without further ado, let's get right into the video. Let's go to the calendar. We're going to go into the future. We're going to build a week of training real quick. We're going to go new workout. Let's say we're going to do squat, bench, and deadlift just for clarity. We're going to squat with belt. That's my composition squat. We're going to do bench press, and we're going to do deadlift with belt, okay? So those are my exercises. Those are what we're going to compare to. Then we're going to actually build the training with the workout planner so that I don't have to do anything crazy with the sets, and I can show you guys exactly what we're doing. So what I want to do is I want my first working set to be a single at RPE 8. That's the most common protocol that you're probably aware of, and for visualization purposes, I think it's the most helpful. But we have plenty of other protocols that we use. We have ramp up sets, we use percentages, and then this protocol will actually use percentages. But when it comes to just having a single at 8 as the top set, the goal of a single at 8 usually is to figure out where our estimated max is and get as close to the single at a 10 as we can without actually having that same level of stress. So most lifters can handle a single at an 8 without too much of an issue. However, I'm actually a lifter where a single at an 8 is usually a little bit too intense for me, especially on my lower body lifts, to be doing every single week, week after week. In fact, I don't tend to respond very well to it. I have some lifters who are very similar in that way. But just for visualization purposes, let's do that. So a single at an 8, based on my estimated max of 180, at the moment, I sprained my ankle, so it's kind of not where I want it to be. But we are where we are, and that's kind of how you have to train. You perform the weight that you have, not the weight that you wish that you had. And this is going to be a theme that you're going to notice throughout this session. So we're going to do a single at an 8, and that's going to be my top set. At least that's my goal, is at 165 for a single at an 8. Now, I'm pretty sure I did 170 for a triple at an 8 the other week, but it doesn't matter. The function here is to find how we would progress given these constraints, given that I just strained my ankle. And if you're writing this for your lifters, those constraints pop up. And so how do you progress with given constraints? Now, the next set we're going to do is going to be 75%. And since we're doing 5 reps, we're going to calculate this 135 for 5. Okay. I'm going to add set, and we want to do 4 sets. Okay. This is the goal for the squat. And we're going to have pretty much the same goals for the bench and the deadlift. So I guess for the purposes of this video, we're just going to stick to the squat, but let's just assume the protocol is the same on the squat, bench, and deadlift. The goal is 165. When I go into training, I'm already thinking about 165 being the goal. And because I have a lot more experience, and because my lifters have a lot more experience in general working with RPE, how they relate to this set is different than how your ranked novice is going to relate to this set. They've performed singles at 8 plenty of times. They've worked up to and warmed up to singles at 8 plenty of times. So their relationship with their warm-ups is much more meaningful because they've had a lot more time to practice, to visualize, to think about what their body needs to feel like in order to successfully hit 165, or potentially they start realizing they actually have 180 for a single at an 8. Okay? On a given day, the estimated max might not be accurate, but we need to find an appropriate weight to hit so that we're getting that intended training effect, which is working up to a single at an 8, getting that skill set, that practice in with high intensities around 92%, and then using that to gauge the rest of your training. In this scenario, let's say I don't hit 165, but I hit 170. I'm warming up to it. The bar is feeling much faster than it usually does, and I am pretty certain that 170 is going to be a single at an 8. Let's just say I hit that and it's right around RPE 8. Then we would actually save this session. That's going to change what 75% is, because 75% is based off of my estimated warm-up max. It's 75% of my estimated warm-up max for the day. So the volume is then going to be driven by that single at RPE 8. So I'm going to calculate that. That's 137.5. So we're only going to add 2.5 kilos, but it's still 2.5 kilos more each set for 4 sets. With the percentage work, it is important to rate the RPE, but it's probably not going to impact the actual goal set for next week, because this volume work, the reason that I wrote this in is to drive the progress for my single. And so the single in this case is what's determining the weight that you're using on percentage work. So let's just assume I get all of these. I'm not failing any of them. It should be pretty easy. A single at 75%, or a set of 5 at 75% usually is around RPE 7, and I usually get more warmed up as I go. Now we're just going to save this workout. And for context of this video, let's just assume a similar scenario happens, okay? So we hit more weight than our plan. The estimated max increased. So now what are you supposed to do for next week? For this next protocol, we're doing the exact same protocol next week. Let's just assume that this is now, Monday. It's Monday the 8th now, okay? The next week happened, all right? Well, our target should be the same as the previous week. The target should be 170. That is the assumption. Your assumption is that you've either maintained your strength or you've gotten stronger. It wouldn't make sense for you to assume otherwise. However, with that assumption, as you're warming up to 170, you become, again, more aware of the warm-up. You become more aware of where your strength is. And if you can't really tell, if you're not really certain if you got stronger, you don't think you feel weaker, then you'd hit 170 again. You'd aim for 170. If there's no indication that you have more strength in you and there's no indication that you have less, then you just hit 170. It's okay to repeat the weight. The proof for you getting stronger would be that this is not a single at an 8, but single at 7.5, a single at 7, a single at 6. Anything lower than a single at RPE 8 is proof that you've improved. You do not need to prove your performance and prove your progress every single time you have a single at an 8. In fact, what can happen if you try to feel like you're proving yourself is that, let's say you need to prove that you got stronger, so you don't even hit 170, you hit 175, and now that's a single out of 10. What if you were wrong? You hit a single out of 10. Well, now you've just performed a higher stress set than intended. That single out of 10 is throwing off the training effect of the development block. The momentum that you've just built is more or less hindered because now you have the proof that you needed that you could hit more weight, but you don't necessarily have the proof that you've performed better than intended. Or that you've gained strength from the last session. So ideally, you either hit the top set at an 8 or lower. You don't need to prove it. Let's say you hit a single out of 6. 175, you hit 170 for a single out of 6. Let's look at what that does to our estimated max, and let's see what that does to our back off work. Okay, so we're going to save this, go to the workout planner. Our estimated max is now 197. So if I want to hit 75% of 197, then my load is 147.5. Okay? So we've just added 10 kilos to the bar by reducing the RPE by 2 units. So now, if we want to hit 75%, calculate 147.5. Cool, 147.5. So now the back off work, in this scenario, you've added 10 kilos to the back off work. You've gained about 10 kilos in your estimated max. By keeping the weight on the bar, you can still do overall more work, and you can prove to yourself that you've gotten stronger. Your back off work will also be right around this RPE, and then you continue that process. But what happens if you move into week Monday the 15th, and maybe you're having a down week. Maybe it's your third week, and your stress is accumulating, and your body's kind of in that stage of adapting. What weight do you aim for now? Well, in this case, given that the estimated max has changed, you can use the workout planner, single out of 7. And by the way, this workout planner, this percentage that is drawing from this calculation, this is literally just the RPE percentage chart average. So if you're wondering where these percentages are coming from, they're coming from this chart. This is about an average of where all the numbers are. So you can see a single out of 8 is around 92.2% for most people. A single out of 7 is 89. A single out of 6 would be right around 86 to 87%. Okay. So if you're wondering where these numbers are coming from and you want to calculate it yourself, you don't want to use the training log, then you can just use this chart and calculate it yourself. But I do like the speed of calculation here. So now what we want to do is figure out what our single out of 8 would be. 182.5. Based on our most recent sessions, a single out of 8 and our new estimated max, the goal weight for the day is 182.5. Wow, 1,823.5. 1,082.5. That's the goal. So this is the goal. This is the aim for the week. You can see that by maintaining the weight from week 1 and week 2 and actually getting stronger, now the estimation has you up by 12.5 kilos, which means that you don't have to force the progress. You do want to assume the progress, but let the numbers prove it for you. And that way, next week, you can add 12.5 kilos. That's the goal. And let's say you warm up, everything is feeling normal, you feel just as good as last week. And so there's no reason to disagree at the moment with this load. But let's say it's a little bit harder than intended. Instead of hitting it at an 8, you hit it at RPE 9. That's okay. Not ideal, but it's okay. It's a little bit harder than intended. Now you save this, and now you adjust the back off work accordingly. Okay, let's just remove this real quick. We want to do 75% for 5 sets of 5 or 4 sets of 5. Well, now the load is 142.5. Our estimated 1 max dropped, and our load is 142.5. So now the remaining sets, you add set 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 4 sets at 142.5. And now the whole training is adjusted because you followed the protocol, because you allowed the RPE and the estimated 1 max to dictate the remaining session. If you want to progress with emerging strategies with your development blocks, you want to focus on dialing in your RPE, letting the RPE gauge the overall direction that you're going to go. Let the RPE guide you in your future training decisions. Make the assumption that the training block that you wrote is going to allow you to make the progress necessary for the following week. However, with your first few weeks in training, you're going to likely hit the same top set for 1 or 2 weeks until the RPE drops and you prove to yourself you've improved performance. That is one way to drive progress, is to wait until you've hit a top set and the RPE is lower. And even if it's lower, that's proof that you can get stronger. You can then do a single out of 7 and a single out of 8 within the same session, though that does impact your overall stress. So a general recommendation would be to accept that you've gotten stronger, move on, and change the down sets accordingly to your newly developed or your new estimated max for the day. As you move through the development blocks, use that top set in this scenario to guide the back off work. When you dial in your RPE, you dial in your top set, allow the progress to happen naturally and organically. There's no forced linear progression. You're not adding weight and RPE. You're letting the estimated 1 rep max dictate how heavy you're adding the weight. You let the estimated 1 rep max kind of guide you for the goal. Make some adjustments if you feel necessary, but if you are feeling fine, you're feeling normal, add the appropriate weight. Add the weight that you have gained and the strength that you've gained based on the RPE of the last week for the top set. So I hope this helps you. I'm sure that you're going to have more questions. There are so many different protocols that you can implement. This is one of the more common ones that you might see. This is one where you combine RPE and percentage. There are plenty of other protocols. So if you're interested in learning how to progress with other protocols, or you have more questions about RPE, let us know. If you want to learn how to write more effective training, RTS Classroom Emerging Strategies enrollment is open now. You can click the link in our bio to sign up. The first lesson is on January 7th, so we look forward to seeing you in class. Let us know if you have any questions, comment below, and we'll talk to you in the next video.
Wait a minute. So we're going to do some training, and we're going to keep doing it until it stops working, and then we'll transition and do something else. Yeah, that's basically it. It's not a training system as much as it's an epistemological system. It's a way of interacting with the world and understanding how things work. I was always interested in tinkering with my training. I'm not sure that I would have wanted a coach to tell me what to do exactly. I like tinkering, and even now I like the tinkering process of it. And I thought, what am I doing to help those people? It can give you a process for coming up with the best creative solutions for an individual lifter. And program for yourself and pay attention to your own training. I think it's a great way to understand a lot of that stuff and hopefully get to where you can build it yourself and speed up that whole learning process.